In this lecture, we will begin our discussion of WordPress's typography settings for themes. To begin, we're going to start with font families. Unfortunately, we won't be able to fully verify the font family settings for our theme. The theme.json file does not provide an option for loading fonts. This operation must be performed with PHP. However, we can add font family settings. In the next section, we are going to load the font family. For now, as long as the option is available in the editor, we can consider the mission complete. Our theme will support two fonts called Pacifico and Rubik. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to both fonts. They are completely free and available on Google Fonts. For this demonstration, the Rubik font will be available as an option on a global level. As for the Pacifico font, this font will only be available for the site title block. Let's begin. Open the theme.json file. First, let's add the font to the Styles sidebar. Inside the Settings object, add a new object called Typography. New font families can be configured under the Typography object. Next, we must add an array called Font Families. Inside this array, we can add our custom fonts. Each font is represented by an object. Let's add the Rubik font. Each object must have three properties. The first property is called Font Family. The value for this property must be a valid CSS value. It's recommended to provide alternative font families if a font can't be loaded. Let's set the font to the following: Rubik Sans Serif. Next, let's add a property called Slug. As we've learned thus far, the slug property will act as a unique identifier for our theme. This is to help WordPress identify a font family. Like most slugs, you should prefix a slug to avoid naming collisions. Let's set the slug to uRubik. The last property is called Name. The value for this property should be a human-readable name. It will be displayed on the drop-down options for font families. The name of our font family will be called Udemy Rubik. We've successfully added our first font family. Let's add another. This time, the font family will be exclusive to the site title block. The settings are exactly the same. In fact, let's make a copy of the typography object. Afterward, open the blocks object inside the settings property, not to be confused with the blocks object from the styles object. We're going to modify the site title block. Inside this object, paste in the typography object. The typography object should be sitting side by side with the colors object. The final step is to convert the values to the second font, which is Pacifico. Change the font family from Rubik to Pacifico. Change the slug from uRubik to uPacifico. Lastly, change the name from Udemy Rubik to Udemy Pacifico. If we did everything right, these options should be available in our theme. In your browser, refresh the editor. First, let's check the Global Styles sidebar. Under the Typography section, we can modify the settings for text and links. Either section will have an option for changing the font family. Looking closely at the Font Family option, our font family has been added. Awesome! Let's review the settings for the site title block. You may or may not be able to find the settings for the font family. If that's the case, you can toggle the font family option by clicking on the three dots from the typography panel. The font family may be hidden. If you were to click on this option, the font family option should appear. As you can see, our font family has been added. The option for selecting the Rubik font will disappear. This is important to remember. Changing the font families for a specific block will override the options for the global fonts. You can select the font family to apply it to our title. However, the font will not be accurate. The browser has fallen back to the other font specified in our value. It does change, it's just not the right font. This is because we haven't loaded the font into our theme. Unfortunately, we will not be able to thoroughly test this option until the next section. Don't worry, we'll definitely learn how to load custom fonts into a theme. For now, as long as the option is available within the editor, we're good to go. So, that's how you can add font families to the editor. In the following lecture, let's continue our discussion of typography.